All right.
Dr. Glenn Doyle.
That's me. That's me.
Are you feeling a little bit of an echo?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of an echo. I like the drum. I was hoping I'd get the drum roll. Yeah, that's right. That's I mean, that's the old theme song from Sergeant Slaughter. Back in the day, like his entrance music was just that.
Yeah.
And it would just go on and on. It wasn't annoying at all, man.
Well, they had way simpler theme songs back then.
That's true.
No. What was the Ruthless Aggression album or what was the other one? It was a Ruthless Adrenaline or something. And then they had like the WWF the music volume. I had volume 4 with the DX song on it, and
that's right.
And it had
You Think You Know Me. That's right.
I think it might have had the X-Pac theme on it too, but I don't know if they put both on the same album.
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine that there even was a time when not everyone had entrance music, right? Like, because I remember, like, so I got into watching kind of in the late 80s when I was like a real little kid, and back in the day, like, so you had, there were times when like really popular, charismatic people, like there's a time when Brutus the Barber Beefcake had no entrance music. And it was fascinating. So he had a big feud with the Honky Tonk Man when Honky was Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah, he was cool and cocky and bad.
Cool. He's cocky. Thank you very much. And it was amazing because Honky would always come out first because he was the heel. And he had this really flamboyant entrance with like all the music. And I mean, and talk about a guy who just gets pro wrestling. Like the Honky Tonk, he gets the art form. Like he gets
right.
So he would have this really flamboyant entrance, and then like it would go silent, and then Brutus would come in. He didn't have entrance music, but he was the face, and it was like so weird to like to have him coming down.
They didn't want to drown out the babyface pops that he was receiving.
You would get that Road Warrior pop, Brutus the Barber Beefcake. But that's the thing. And at the moment, he was big. He was, I mean, he was a huge baby face. But there's a time when the $1 Million Man, kind of before Money, like he didn't have entrance music either. And again, you think of these people like now, like even the guys who are coming out for the first time, like they've got the entrance video and the music and whatever. And it's weird to think that there was a time that wasn't the case.
But even in the 80s, like Randy Savage's music was just Pomp and Circumstances. It's not like Pomp and Circumstances. Why did I say Circumstances? The Circumstances were very pompous.
They were. The Macho Man, they're always they're the cream of the crop. Ooh, dig it.
But the stuff was
which was so random, by the way. Like Pomp and Circumstance. Like what? It's the graduation.
Right, it's like, what are we graduating from Monday night?
Like why not? But it worked. Like it totally worked.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. I mean, it was a ceremony. His matches were a ceremony, so that's a ceremonial tune.
Well, I mean, if we're being Gorilla Monsoon, they were a happening.
They were. It was a happening in there.
They were literally hanging from the rafters. It's a happening right in here. But yeah, because I remember, like, so when I was a real little kid, my dad would take me to the matches. Like, so I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and that was, it was kind of a B town. But
you're a Chicago guy now, right?
Right now, I'm in Chicago. Yeah.
Okay.
Chicago is the A town. It's the A town. Rosemont Horizon. Yeah, dig it. Now the Allstate Arena. But
peace up, A town down.
That's right. we're the land of punk out here now. Or I guess nowhere's the land of punk either.
Yeah, I mean,
so the Fed would come through. Like we never got really any WCW or NWA until they got big in like 97, 98.
Right, when they were like competition.
Right.
Like in those 83 weeks.
Yeah, those famous 83 weeks.
Right.
That we will never hear the end of. Those famous 83 weeks. And so the Fed would come through and have kind of like, the B-level house shows. But I remember when I was a real little kid, WrestleMania 4 on March 27th, 1988, they did the thing. So this is when they were still doing closed circuit. And they would rent out theaters. and you could go, and it was really great because it was like it was a crowd experience while you were watching a pay-per-view. And my dad took me, it was a big surprise, like took me to see WrestleMania 4. And my big memory of WrestleMania 4, it's the first WrestleMania. See, I think WrestleMania 4 is an underrated WrestleMania. Like you had 1, 2, and 3.
Was it Trump? Was it a Trump Taj Mahal?
It was the first one at the Trump Plaza. So you had our future president there in the front row.
Well, he's no longer our future president. He was the future president at that time. At this time, he's the past president. Oh man, we're all these timelines.
According to him, he's the future president. According to him, he's going to be back, right?
Okay, yeah, I guess.
Anyway. So go to WrestleMania 4, go closer. And my big memory was like, so for 3 years, we'd had super Hogan centric WrestleManias.
Yeah.
Right? So WrestleMania 1, Rock and Wrestling Connection. You had WrestleMania 2 in the Cage with Bundy. You had WrestleMania 3, Brother in the Pontiac Silverdome, where I lifted up 1,000-pound Andre the Giant in front of 200,000 people. Whatever it is.
It's an embellished story. Right.
WrestleMania 4 was the first WrestleMania that ended without Real American playing. And I mean, you still got Hogan posing. But that was kind of like, I was a kid. I didn't really know the graduations. I didn't really know Pomp and Circumstance. But like I heard it playing over and over again when Savage won the title. So fast forward years later, when I start hearing it with graduations, I'm like, why are they playing the Macho Man? I know that.
Because it's graduation. Dig it.
It's graduation. It's the cream of the crop, brother. Dig it. Oh yeah.
So, mental health.
Yeah.
That's you were like. So you put your did you want to be a pro wrestler and you put that aside to go get an education and do a real thing?
I think I wanted to be a pro wrestler for like a week, and my dad's, you know what, kid, let's maybe get off that. Yeah. I had plans too. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna wrestle Greg the Hammer Valentine and use his own hold on him, man. I'm gonna do it. My dad's like, let's do something else. No, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. In fact, I started college as a music major because my brilliant idea was that was how you got girls. You know, I figure if Billy Joel, looking the way Billy Joel looks, can be marrying supermodels, maybe that's the way Glenn can marry a supermodel. So
let's pluralize that. Supermodels.
He claimed, Billy Joel claims, even before he was married to Christy Brinkley, like he claims that he had a thing with Al McPherson. I'm like, whatever. It was working for him. So that was my plan. Like once upon a time, what was to be a rock star. And again, I started college as a music performance major, composition minor, and when nobody knew. Because I was depressed out of my skull.
Okay.
And I'd been depressed out of my skull ever since ever since I can remember. Now, when I was a teenager, I started getting into, and this is going to get into an area of mutual interest of ours, but I started getting into the self-help literature. And that saved my life. So when college came around and man, again, I was just depressed out of my mind. I was dropping out of school. I spent a couple of years playing piano for money. Like these places where you're stuck to the floor, like the sticky floor. Like, it's a quality piano bar when you stick to the floor.
There are sticky keys, sticky piano keys.
Right. Actually, you know what? I played one place where the piano was so shitty. Like, are we uncensored? Can I say?
No, you say whatever the heck you want, dude.
Gotta be like DX and like boop. We promise we won't say boop, boop, boop.
Yeah. You were up all night.
All night. I played one place where the piano was really crappy and it was off in the corner and had a bunch of cigarette burns on the keys. And much of the notes didn't work at all. And I had to figure out how to play around those keys because it doesn't work with every song. Right.
Right.
So I dropped out and I was playing piano and I was doing dinner theater and stuff and whatever. And I finally came back around to like, how am I going to get out of this funk? And I came back around to the self-help stuff that had helped me years before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got the idea in my head. I'm like, you know what, this is something worth doing. Like this is something that has so profoundly impacted my life. And that's where I started getting interested in guys like, like our mutual friend, James Arthur Ray. And I started to get the idea in my head, and I got into, like, I started being a psych major with the idea of I'm going to go do the self-help thing. Like, I'm not just going to be a psychologist, but I really want to have a presence that speaks to people beyond people I'm able to see myself.
Right.
So that kind of got me into the culture of this whole self-help thing. And I'm at the point now where I'm on the board of an organization called Seek Safely. Which is all about ethics and accountability in the self-help industry. Because I don't know if you know this, there's some grifters out there. Just a few.
Been around carnies for like 23 years.
There's actually a lot of similarity between those worlds, man.
Right. And stand-up comedy. There's the same thing. Promoters promoting the hell out of shit.
Big time.
Right.
I'm joking about how the self-help world and the pro wrestling world have similarities, but they really are. Like there are a lot of really colorful, charismatic, larger than life personalities, usually it's the person, like, how they say in pro wrestling that your ring persona is like you turned up.
Yeah.
To 11. A lot of the self-help world is like that as well. And if you kind of start getting into some of these guys' background, you can see, well, look, I've created, Tony Robbins even says that. I created this Tony Robbins guy. Like, I created this character of Tony Robbins. So there really is some I'm sure it's not a coincidence that world resonated with me.
Right. Well, wrestling, speaking, any of that wrestling, speaking, stand-up comedy, of course, all of that is show business.
Big time.
That's all filling the look at me holes of others.
Big time.
The person you're listening to them, and it's not helping you as much as it's helping them. Like it's a symbiotic relationship.
Big time. A lot of the spiel, like if you go into self-help Twitter or self-help TikTok, and you'll see a lot of these short little videos that these guys do, the skill set involved really is similar to cutting a promo. Like it's communicating something about who you are and what you have to offer entertainment wise. They wouldn't call it entertainment,
right?
But a big part of why self-help is that there is this big element of, like, look, we consume in this culture, we consume self-help like it's entertainment, right? Like we get into these personalities and their stories and whatever. It's basically cutting a promo.
Right. Well, I think I've heard the same comparison to battle rap.
Oh, sure.
It's cutting promos. It's like
absolutely.
So I'm like, oh man, I could have avoided filling my bump card up for the last 20 years.
It's so tragic when I'm sure you think the same thing, that it's so tragic when you see guys come along, people come along who they think they're gonna trade on their ring work, right? And I'm gonna be amazing in the ring. And they unfortunately kind of neglect that skill set of talking people into the arena, because that's really what promoters, right? Yeah.
So becoming a draw isn't something you get taught somewhere. You have to learn that out there on the road. Like you have to figure out how to do that, and that's too much of something to like when you started with that example, you're like, oh, I'm going to train on the fundamentals and then I'm going to just get it. I'm going to be master it. And I thought that was going to happen to me, dude. Like I thought that I didn't make a backup plan. I didn't get a college degree. I was like, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. I decided that when I was 13 years old.
Right.
Stepped into a ring for the first time when I'm 14 years old, and I'm still in it at 37.
Right.
So it's like, it's really like you have lofty goals, You do, but
well, I think it messes with us. So when we're kids, right, and it's presented as sport,
right.
because I mean, and at that age, we're not like we kind of intuitively get the entertainment piece, the sports entertainment piece.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's kind of presented as sports, and I have lots of thoughts and feelings about the differences between the kind of the kayfabe era versus kind of the post kayfabe era, right? Because if you look at I was just thinking of this the other day. Like I was looking at some of my old wrestling magazines, and if you look at the faces of the audience back when there, like it was still kind of a mystery how much of this was pre-planned. Like they kind of know something's up, but they're not really, and they're suspending disbelief. Like, oh. If you go back and look and listen to kind of the old crowd reactions, there's a difference. There's an electricity there.
Well,
that I'm not going to say isn't there now. It is different. It's just different.
Everybody was paying attention. That's why.
Yes.
Everybody was paying attention. There was absolutely nobody who wasn't like not paying attention because there was less things to distract you. We are a society of distracted folks nonstop. When was the last time you were bored?
Right.
Like, do you ask that to everybody you ever speak to? When was the last time you were bored? When was the last time you wondered something and then you didn't automatically look in your phone and figure out what the thing was? Like I like at times to be bored, and sometimes I like to be confused about stuff and like challenge myself to not look it up until I've remembered it. And once I remember it, then I go, oh, let me just confirm that I'm right on this. And if I'm wrong on it, at least I didn't cheat right away.
Right. Well, and you see it in kind of some of the challenges with the product today, right? Like so one of the criticisms of the current product is that, man, we're seeing the same matches over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons for that is we have essentially a pay-per-view. Like let's be honest, like a 3-hour live event once upon a time was a pay-per-view,
right? And
we've got that every Monday night, and back in the day, God, I'm going to sound like Jim Cornette. Back in the day, damn, back in the day.
God damn.
I'm going to sound like Jim Cornette. But back in the day, like you could spend a year building, for example, the Mega Powers Explode, right? And you could take like these teeny tiny little steps, like at Survivor Series and at the Royal Rumble, and just nudge that story forward just a little bit. Because you didn't have, God, WWE has how many live hours of TV to fill every week?
There's too much to even count.
These stories need time to breathe, and they don't have that time because I got to fill this TV time. So we wind up with the same matches and 50-50 booking, and it's tough to stay invested. Like and it's such a drag too because there's so much talent out there that I want to be invested. But man, do I not want to watch 3 hours of the same matches again? Oh.
What was I about to say? Sorry, I forgot what I was about to say. But so the part of what I was saying was that part of what I was saying right before you talked about the same matches every week was that like the urge nowadays for a scratch to ever. Like an itch to every scratch right away is the reason the storylines are so like start stop right like on the same day, not like a build for a year, because like people's attention spans are so lit, they're not gonna want to care about the story. When not only that, but you're competing with everything else, not just wrestling. You're competing with everything. You're competing with the distraction of everything. You're on your phone. Like you don't need to watch and if they can show you a clip, like that's what a whole hour of what Raw is like a whole hour of clips recapping the stuff you just watched.
It so is too. Yeah.
And it feels like that might drive enough people away. That might drive a lot of people away, as much as extending a storyline out.
When you combine And mind you, I'm a stockholder in WWE. I'm invested in their success. Like I'm not trying to be negative. And part that, you know what, it's one of the reasons why I'm frustrated with it. Because man, I really want them to be successful.
Right.
But when you think about the fact that you know, once upon a time, okay, so they had the weekly. I remember, I remember when I was a real little kid, we went to one of the times that the live show that they came in and did a bunch of television tapings in Des Moines, and this is back when they would do like a month's worth of TV in one night. And so they would film matches for Saturday night's main events. Like if you remember the Saturday night's main events, where the main event was Hulk Hogan, the Big Boss Man, the steel cage, where he suplexed him off the top. That was this card. Like I was there, and they would film like again a whole month's worth of TV right then, and then the like in dribs and drabs, right? Like over like it would be unusual for like on one of these weekly shows like Primetime Wrestling or Superstars or whatever. It would be unusual for a big thing to happen, right? Maybe once a month you would get a big thing happening. You probably wouldn't get a title change more than once or twice a year, right? But you get somebody attacking something or whatnot. The fact that they have to burn through so much story now, because again, they have so much time to fill, like that creates the environment where, man, we've got essentially a clip show. And by the way, it doesn't help that we've got this culture of announcers that have to oversell everything, and it's clear they've got somebody in their ear. Like
they're forcing it. They're forcing it. They're really.
And the catchphrases. Oh my God, the catchphrases! If I hear one more time, Sasha Banks, it's boss time.
Right.
Take a shot every time. Like it's boss time,
dude. Do you take a shot every time they say something's the first time ever?
Oh, it's the first time ever.
They say the first time ever for everything.
Shades of fill in the blank. You know, like, yeah. At least now that Taker's retired, we will no longer hear he's the best pure striker in the. this is an organization where Ronda Rousey wrestled. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the best pure striker. I'm pretty sure Dan Severn or Kem Shamrock would have something to say about them.
So getting off of pro wrestling.
I know.
So
mental health.
When you discovered like self-help and that stuff, like the literature, you said you discovered that early. What was the first thing that like spoke to you and gripped you hard?
Oh, I can tell you exactly. It's a book. It was a book titled "The Road Less Traveled" by M. Scott Peck. If you ever heard that, it's one of the most famous self-help books ever. And so M. Scott Peck was this psychiatrist. He was an old Army psychiatrist. And he was into some wacky shit. And The Road Less Traveled is all about, it famously starts off, the first sentence of The Road Less Traveled is, life is difficult. And he frames this whole thing as, look, we have to accept that life is hard and we have to figure out ways to handle that instead of denying and disowning and trying to, like pretend that life isn't hard. And I remember picking that up and reading that. And at first I wanted to put the fucking book back on the shelf because I'm like, look, I'm in the self-help section. I know life is difficult. I don't need this guy telling me that life is difficult. But what grabbed me about it was this was not a bullshit, everything is cool, we're going to pretend something is true that it's not. Like he was dealing with the real world. Like in The Road Less Traveled, Peck talks about how, look, we got to make some sacrifices. Like you're not going to get out of this without experiencing some pain. How you deal with pain is going to make a big, big difference in your quality of life. And that really, really spoke to me. Now from there, I got way into, so this is when I was in high school. I got way into, the king of the world at the time was Anthony Robbins. At the time, he had just written his second book titled Awaken the Giant Within, which I think is probably the best self-help book ever written. It's one of the longest. It's one of the most comprehensive. Now that I'm a psychologist, I know it's one of the most problematic. Like I can look at some of the shit that he says in there and I'm like, oof. I don't know.
It was a different time.
It's a different time. And self-help has kind of a paradigm that is just to the left of the behavioral science, like the actual behavioral science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our friend James Arthur Ray comes into the mix too, because he likes to talk about how he has studied psychology and how he has studied, kind of all this behavioral science. And then he'll go off and say something that is not supported by the research. And you look at it, you're going, that's really, you studied psychology and you think that, do you? But I got way into Tony Robbins. He had back in the day, he had one of this groundbreaking personal growth program called Personal Power. If you've ever heard of that, it was a 30-day. But I still use elements of this in my own psychotherapy practice today. Like his whole idea is, look, you don't try to improve a bunch of stuff all at once. What you do is you choose one little 1% a day. Mm-hmm. And you do it like day after day after day after day. Mm-hmm. And you build this foundation. And again, that just blew my mind. What killed me about self-help was that, look, I was super depressed. And I didn't want to go to my parents. And I don't want to go to like the school counselor and be like, man, I'm having fantasies and dreams about killing myself.
Yeah, but when it got to like when I was a kid,
yeah, you
couldn't say stuff like that without like getting like locked away or something.
Right. You never. I mean, there's talk about intimidating and overwhelming, and but self-help kind of offered me like the escape hatch, because it's like, like I can read this stuff and either it works or it doesn't work, but it's something to do other than having to freak everybody out. I remember once, like when I was a junior in high school, I had this panic attack at school. And they melted down. Like they brought in an ambulance. I was so humiliated. Like they brought in an ambulance. And I'm in the ambulance, like wheezing like a fish out of water. I'm fine. It's fine. Clearly not fine. But that kind of taught me my lessons. Like, oh man, like, it's if you say too much. And I know there are people like that. Like one of the people asked me, like, so I'm a psychologist now. Like, why am I still such an advocate of self-help? Like, why am I on the board of Seek Safely? And why do I still consider it important? Because look, I'm not dumb. I know that there are lots of people who are struggling and who want to improve their lives who are not going to come to me as their first option because I represent a system. It's got its problems. I don't know if you knew this. Mental health delivery system, it's got its problems. A little bit. So I know a lot of people's first taste of any kind of behavioral science intervention is going to come from the self-help world. And so it's really important that the resources and the people in it be held to a high standard, which is why I give James Arthur Ray shit on Twitter.
So I have to make sure that the point is always made that the people who write self-help books are people.
Sure.
And people are flawed. People are imperfect.
You bet.
People are morally compromised sometimes. And
he says gently, morally compromised.
So you got to give not just yourself grace, but you have to give grace. Remember that these are humans. I say this like to anybody who I'm talking to who's like deifying somebody, and I'm like, don't relax. They're a person.
Yeah, you bet. Here's the thing. I'm all about grace. I do not, as James claimed, I do not teach forgiveness in all situations, but no, I'm all about grace. I think though there is a type of person. I mean, we can bring this back to pro wrestling. I think there's a type of person who will take advantage of others' propensity to extend grace. Because look, if somebody has contributed positively to your world, dude, I'm a James boy. I like his early work, man. There's a reason. Like, I'll give you a little bit of backstory. Like when I was a fan of his. Like he was one of my guys, and I was a fan of his. When he went to prison, I was bummed. Like I wasn't yet a psychologist, and I remember thinking, man, this is a real bummer because this was a terrible accident that happened, and people are going to use this as evidence that the self-help world is a scam, because people think that anyway,
right? And
I was bummed.
It's fake, right?
Yeah, right. God, the parallels are just everywhere, man. It's self-help entertainment. No, so I was bummed, and I remember thinking that. I remember thinking, man, they're going to use this as an excuse to down self-help, and I became Facebook friends with James. When he got out in whenever it was, 2014, it must have been. By that time, I was a psychologist. I'd finished up with graduate school, and I remember I got into psychology because I want to be a self-help guy. So I'm building my brand at the time,
right?
And I messaged him and I said, dude, I'm a big fan from back in the day. And if, like, I know you're struggling to get back on your feet, if there's anything I can do, and he messaged me back and he's really cool about it. He says, thank you for the support. It's been a rough time. Dude went to prison.
Yeah.
It's
of course it's a rough time. I mean, how do you adjust to being like, he was probably so successful and so rich and so living inside of like a spoiled cocoon that he put himself inside of.
You bet. Yeah, he was in a rough spot too. Again, like I want this super clear. I mean, I have lots of empathy for James, and to this day, nothing would make me happier. And I'll say this on your podcast, and I will say this every single time I'm asked about it. Nothing would make me happier than James unblocking me on Twitter, but having a real conversation about this. Because here's what I'm going to say is that when Jamesy got out of prison, he had a choice about, look, am I going to take a real honest look at what happened here? Because what you're saying right now about, man, he was in a bubble that he put himself in. That's absolutely true. This could have been a real opportunity for him to really step up and say some important things about hubris and about ego and whatnot. What began to bother me, though, was not only was he kind of right back to his spiel from before the tragedy, he was really getting into some predatory, like, this is what I said to you on Twitter, like, man, like this is like, he reminds me of kind of the old predatory territory guys. Like, he was really really pushing aggressive marketing techniques and over promising. He was out there saying stuff like, man, if you come to my seminar, I will help you heal and integrate your trauma. Trauma is a serious thing. Like you're going to get people coming in who are having like really serious, like suicidal symptoms, man. He doesn't have the kind of training, the kind of experience to deal with that. And so that kind of bothered me. And I tried to bring it up to him. Like, I tried to be like, dude, maybe let's learn some lessons about hubris. Like, maybe let's pull back. And maybe let's kind of ground what we have to offer. And again, I'm here thinking about the self-help industry in general.
Well, I mean, can I say, and I don't want to take shots at James for sure, because I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan.
I know it.
But I'm also a huge fan of appropriate ceremony. I'm also a huge fan of what those kind of sacred ceremonies.
You bet.
That's like, why not go to somebody who has, like, I know people who hold those kind of ceremonies. Yeah. I'm not a famous person or a rich person, but I would talk to someone like me to help them these connections are always super duper important to me. So I always want to go, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, and and that's a person who, that's a connection that I made with a friend. Let's say you and I made a connection where, like, later on we're gonna have some shit that's like life changing and huge. Like the fact that we made that connection based off of you trolling James Arthur Ray on Twitter.
That's a very gentle troll, if it was a troll.
Yeah,
he came at me hard though. He's a bitter guy.
I choked it out of my mouth. I was like, trolling.
I'm a bitter guy who's living in the past. Here's the thing. Okay, I'm a self-help guy. and I'm way into. I mean, like I always tell anybody who asks me about self-help that there's a certain type of self-help person, and our instinct is let's try it out, maybe it'll work, right? What you're saying though, and again, and I'm not trying to turn this into like I'm truly not trying to turn this into a thing where I'm just trashing James. It's one thing to be like, hey, I know a guy who knows a guy who might have some ideas that might be helpful.
Well, like there's tribes and there's people who could use the money. Yeah,
you betcha. There's a difference between that and James, who was not trained and who was not qualified, who said he was charging $9,000. Packing more people into the thing than any person who knew what they were doing would do. Making it last longer so he could say that his was longer than the natives. Like and here's the thing. Again, like people make mistakes, man. People make mistakes. They make errors in judgment. Yeah. Had he come out after that and been like, man, I let my ego get the better of me. I shouldn't have done that. What he's saying is like, accidents, man. What you gonna do?
Well,
like, James, like no.
Glenn, let's also factor in a possible influence. The influence. Let's factor in maybe somebody who's like, hey, you want to hold on to your fortune? Well, you know, whoever really knows what all the factors even are. So,
look, I would love nothing more than for James to have some more nuanced, authentic conversations about this. This is like the conversation we're having is the conversation he should be having. The conversation he wants to have about it is, boy, anybody who criticizes me about this is living in the past.
But I think anybody who ever has to have a conversation where they're accountable in any way is always going to go, you are just hating on me. You're victimizing me. But I'm not making this specifically about James. I'm just saying anybody at all.
You bet.
Would deflect because it's so much easier to deflect. When we talk about self-help, a thing I say all the time, and I don't know if you've ever heard me say it, but I've said it on this podcast a million times. And if the people who are listening or watching this hear me say it, and if you heard me say it a billion times, you can hear me say it 1,000,001 times. Here it comes. The thing about self-help that I'm weirded out about. It's not something that upsets me, but I think a good amount of people are looking for a magic wand, and they just want to fix. They just want something fixed. So, if you go into the bookstore, there's going to be a section that says self-help. There will be no self-fix section.
Yep.
So you got to keep doing the work. You got to keep on reading those books. You got to keep not just reading those books, but then applying the things that are in the books in order to take steps to change your life.
You bet. It's not just self-help either, man. Like, I mean, it's talk about mental health. You can talk about spirituality,
body image.
You get fitness. That's absolutely.
Pro wrestler. Absolutely. Dysmorphia is like great. Dude, I ran into like a friend who was really close friends with me in like 8th grade. We were real good pals. He became like really good friends with one of my really good friends, and we didn't really talk all that much, but I was with my good friend and we went and visited him, and he was like, oh my God, James, you're in better shape than anybody that we went to school with. Oh yeah, my real name's James, by the way. And he's like, what's the secret?
I wasn't going to break kayfabe, but
he was like, what's the secret? And in my back of my head, I was like, body dysmorphic disorder. Nice. and then I was like, weights, dude, the weight room. That's the trick. Just go to the weights. Like you weight train. That's how you do it.
You know, for me, that was one of the more interesting parts of that Colt Cabana podcast that got CM Punk in so much trouble a couple of years ago.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So CM Punk went on.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly. Don't have to tell me. I'm just kidding.
Never know. Like I was here thinking, man, that was huge, but you know.
No, of course I know.
But it was so interesting because not only was it like, first of all, I thought it was great where Punk was like, I don't want this to be a shoot interview, and it basically turns into a shoot interview. But a part of what he and Cole were talking about was, man, the pressure that's involved, and man, we're going out in front of the entire world every week in our underwear. Mm-hmm. And there is, I mean, there's a certain pressure involved. And what's interesting about that is, like, when you think about Punk, like, you don't think about like one of these guys who's like, you know, he's not Chris. Yeah, he's not Chris Masters, right? They're
called body guys,
right? Yeah.
CM Punk's never going to be accused of that.
And one of the things that made that made him so fascinating, like he's one of my, I mean, I'm from Chicago, you know, he's one of my favorite guys ever. But like, one of the things that made him so fascinating, his story so fascinating, was that he's not this traditional WWE monster, you know, aesthetic guy. But even the fact that even he felt that is so telling, and it's a really under discussed thing. And did you watch? I'm sure you have. Like, there was a documentary out of God, the Slammed inside indie pro wrestling. You remember this a couple years ago, where it was talking about the NWS guys up in.
That was. Are we talking about Card Subject to Change?
I'm about to say that again.
Card Subject to Change, the NWS.
Well, that was a different one. Same fed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This was like a TV version of that.
Okay.
And it followed a couple of these guys who were trying to, like, they produced it for like a History Channel or something. Mm-hmm. And it followed a couple of these guys who were trying to break into, or like in some cases get back into. And I'm trying to remember what the dude's name was. Danny Inferno. Like, they were following Danny Inferno because he had like a couple years in WWE, got cut, and he was trying to kind of get back in. Like, he was taking indie dates with NWS, and he was like auditioning for Ring of Honor and whatever.
It's very well respected, man.
Absolutely. I mean,
he's super well respected inside of the business.
I can totally see that. Like, and you can absolutely see he's got the mind for it. Like, you can absolutely say it's a super talented guy. Mm-hmm. And you look at this and you're like, man, like, there is this entire culture of, like, even just on the indies, these guys who put in just the same amount of work to their look and their conditioning and stuff as these guys, you know, who are on Raw.
Sometimes more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It blows my mind. Like, the work ethic and the commitment and the love of the art form just blows my mind.
I think, like, the thing that I don't think I talk about enough, and I probably should. The fact that, like, the promoters and indie wrestling, all of that is just taking advantage of how much of marks we are. So they'll give us nothing, like barely anything. I've never earned a living off of being a pro wrestler. Sure. I've always had to work the shittiest jobs. I've always had to work my ass off and do a billion other things to try to make ends meet. Not the delectable course of ends meet. I'm talking about keeping the lights on.
Ends meet. Hey-o.
But you know, indie, it's like, oh, some other dick's gonna do it for nothing. You know what I mean? Because they're such a mark and we're such a mark, and the promoters are marks, but like, they have power, and really, when it comes back to it, they're not trained in the business. They're not like, just somebody who's got enough money to run a show can run a show, and it's not policed in any way. Right. So those people put on a show and they book their friends, right? Or they book who will work for cheap to free.
Sure.
And we fill up our bump cards and do damage to our brains.
Well, and that's the thing that it ties back into what I was saying, is like those bumps are, I was going to say, just as real in some cases, depending on the equipment you're working with. It's getting more real than the bumps that you're going to take on national TV on Raw.
Right.
You know, I mean, Who is it? Harley Race, who says the only thing that's real in this business are the money and the miles. I mean, that stuff is as real on the indies, more so, taking more damage. And let's be honest, you don't have a writing staff. Like you don't have the support of these slick production packages and whatever. So really, you got to be way more creative and
rely on yourself.
Absolutely. Not to mention, so you're relying on yourself. Not to mention, you're getting yourself to these shows.
Yeah. The thing I always worry about is I always worry about like getting another concussion and not being able to drive home safely.
Oh, of course.
And that's a thing that not a whole lot of people have to worry about, maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe they do.
Well, for most people, it'd be a weird day if they did. But for somebody in the industry, like it's a Tuesday, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a good idea. So out of curiosity, like this is off topic, and maybe edit this part out. But what
did I tell you about editing? I'm not going to edit anything.
I'm just going to give you the opportunity. If this turns out to suck. Now, I'm so curious. I don't know if your listeners are interested in this. So there was that documentary, Card Subject to Change, and there's kind of the TV version of it called Slammed inside Indie Pro Wrestling. They both dealt with this NWS and what was his name? Johnny
Johnny Falco.
Dapper Johnny Falcone. I was so curious because after watching those, I tried to Google it and they went belly up, but I couldn't. I don't know what happened. Like there's no place where it's just like, here's what happened to that promotion. Out of curiosity, what happened to that? What happened to those guys? Because they were a thing. Like NWS was a thing.
I'm not qualified to give the exact right answer.
Yeah.
But I know it had something to do with not being able to distribute the money correctly.
No, that's a shock. That's a shock in the indie wrestling world.
But yeah, dude, I worked for Dapper for years.
Did you? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did tons of shows for Dapper.
Okay.
Like I used to be the I don't even want to say I'm a name. I'm not a name anyway, but at the time,
what did I say? You're the man, the myth, the legend.
Right. So at the time I had just come off of TV. I was in CZW and stuff. So when I left CZW, I would go and do these NWS dates, and I would put over ticket sellers. So they would sell tickets for Dapper, and he'd give him a match with a real wrestler, and that would be me.
Nice.
So
nice.
I had some fun times. I mean, I met some cool ass people, and
yeah, I mean, as far as
some experience.
I mean, as far as indie promotions go, I mean, it seemed as straightforward as any of them, and I was curious, because clearly they had, they were smooth enough to get, smooth, JB Smooth. They were smooth enough to get, a couple documentaries made and could kind of get that PR or whatever. But again, if you Google them now, it's like disappeared into the ether.
You know what I always think about when Dapper was like, "Here's a little trade secret. When you tape the flyer on, you push the air bubbles out."
That's you dumb motherfucker.
Don't tell that to my competition. It's like, do you want to also tell the competition that like you're not authorized to collect this money legally?
Make
a documentary about how you're collecting money, even though you're not supposed to be doing that. So you might get in some trouble and not be able to run shows anymore.
Ooh, hypothetically.
Don't tell my competition you push the air bubbles out.
Boy, Gino Moore passed a couple years ago, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just passed like relatively recently, like in the last 2 years.
Did you watch the Card Subject to Change, right?
Oh yeah.
So I talk about I talk about this man every episode of this podcast, so it only makes sense for me to talk about the Nigeria Nightmares.
Yes.
Remember that team?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
The taller one was one of my closest and dearest friends that I've ever had in my life.
Okay.
And he's since passed. But I remember him always saying to me how inspired he was by Geno Moore. And he would say, seeing that fat motherfucker live so long gives me hope. Gives me hope that I'm going to be an old fat motherfucker too.
Fair.
and Geno Moore outlived Aaron. Can you believe that shit?
That's hashtag goals, man. Like that's so you worked for like CZW. That's the hardcore stuff. Like that's the
I never did the hardcore stuff at all. I mean, I got my start there, so I was just a little kid. Like I wasn't like a big star there or a main eventer or anything. I was just in a jobber tag team.
So you weren't getting like stuff stapled to you by Necro Butcher and
no.
like in the wrestler.
Yeah, I have a pretty funny story about Necro Butcher though.
Oh, do tell.
I might have told it on here or on the other podcast before, but back in the day, so this had to be like 2003 or 4, like when he was first in CCW. I was still like paying my dues, and I maybe it was 2001. I was still like paying my dues and still like training at the school and all that stuff. And the ring announcer at the time, his name was Dennis Schock. He used to give me his clipboard and his pen, and he would say, walk around and ask everybody what their weight and hometown is. Mm-hmm. So I asked a couple people. I know that the one guy was from England, and his name was Jody Fleisch. And I remember this is not important to the Necro Butcher part, but his British accent was so strong that when he was trying to tell me he was from Essex, England, I thought he was saying A6. I was like the shoes? Like the shoes.
That's right.
You're from where they make the shoes? And he was like, and then he just wrote it on the paper, and I was like, all right, I'm a jerk. I don't know. Sorry.
But as a side note, isn't it great that when we're kids, like the only like cities or towns that we know in like other countries are because we heard them on like wrestling TV. Like we all knew like Leeds, England, because the British Bulldogs from Leeds.
Yeah. So when I went up to Necro to ask him his weight and hometown, he told me his hometown, and then he was like, I don't know, this had to be like 2001 because we had just started running at the arena. And Necro was like, I don't know, my weight's about this or what. But I just took a dump. He's like, and then he turned to whoever else was next to him and to me and to the people next to him on the other side. He went, I took a dump at the ECW arena. So it had to be new. It had to be like his first time at the arena. So it was a brand new thing.
It's a big moment in a performer's life, my friend. Yeah. Oh, I love it. So coming back to like self-help and personal development and stuff, like so your big influences, like what stuff has really kind of turned your crank?
Napoleon Hill. I think mostly what originally got me into it was my mom used to play Abraham Hicks tapes for us when we were kids.
Oh, love Abraham Hicks. Yeah.
So a little bit of that. I don't really jump into a whole lot of that anymore. I mean, I still carry all those things.
Sure.
But I don't read. I don't read the books now because it's like I read like wrestling biographies, autobiographies. That's my whole life. Absolutely.
The Abraham Hicks stuff is really, really foundational. You know the story about how they kept him out of The Secret, right?
They cut Abraham Hicks out of The Secret?
Yeah. So the first version of the movie version of The Secret had a lot of Esther and Jerry Hicks in it. But they ran into what most people assume are profit sharing issues.
I figured it was probably about the confusing nature of channeling.
Yeah, the Secret as a movie. Doesn't really get into kind of the more metaphysical. Actually, well, neither does, like, I'm sure you've seen What the Bleep Do We Know? Which is kind of a companion movie. Like, they're both kind of out at the same time. And What the Bleep Do We Know is it has a few of the same people in The Secret, but it kind of deals more with the quantum physics piece of it, and it has a few people who are into channeling, and it kind of treats it the same way. It's like, we're not going to mention it. It gets too off the subject of the law of attraction, etc.
Yeah, because then people will be like, that's some weird, like, then everybody then will then go back to the swindlers. Someone's trying to swindle me. They're faking this. You know it's fake, right?
You know it's fake. It's fake. The thing about Esther and Jerry Hicks, though, is it's so, because I'm kind of, I have a feeling you're kind of the same way. Like, I'm not terribly interested. Like, she says she's channeling. Okay, whatever. Like, I'm interested in the ideas. I like.
Yeah,
there's some,
the messages are way more important than the method.
Yeah, and it's a hook. It's a marketing hook, and who knows if it's real or not. Again, above my pay grade. Don't really care. Showbiz, baby. Esther and Jerry Hicks, like, their whole spiel was kind of based upon the earlier work of a woman named Jane Roberts, who had the same thing going on. She called her spirit Seth, and it was kind of the same deal. And they met with Seth, and they're like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." Well, what always kills me about Esther Hicks. And I think, and Jerry Hicks, I think, has passed away, but Esther is still going strong. And the thing that always kills me is, like, if you ever hear her talk in her normal voice, like, she's the most down to earth, like she's kind of a dork, and then suddenly she starts channeling Abraham, and she's this Eastern European countess out of nowhere, and it's such. But then over the years, if you compare some of the, one of two things is happening. Either the Abraham collective that is inhabiting her is fluid and changing. Like, some spirits left, other spirits came in, who knows? Either that, or Abraham is getting sick of this accent, because you can see the accent over the years, kind of like, she's like, do I have to do the whole, okay, here we go. It reminds what it reminds me of is Kofi Kingston. You remember back in the day when Kofi Kingston had, like, the really heavy, and then at some point he's like, I'm so sick of doing that. Like, can we just say I got hit in the head or something?
It's like Lana. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, talk about wasted potential, man. Like Rusev Day. Oh, I guess they can be together again now that Lana is no longer. Who
knows? But by the time this episode comes out on all the podcasting apps, they might have been together.
They might be back together in AEW. Who knows? What's your take on AEW? Are you into it?
I love that it exists.
Yes.
I love that it exists, and I absolutely am happy for all the people who get the opportunity to make a living off of wrestling. Yes. It's something I've always dreamed of doing, and if AEW was interested in picking me up, I absolutely would take the opportunity to use that platform, because for sure I have tons to offer. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be a desperate, thirsty bitch, though. You know what I'm saying?
Desperate, thirsty DTB. Reminds me of ODB back in the TNA days. I'll give you a DTB.
Right. It's like, but dude, I have so much fun with wrestling, and I have, like, tons of. The thing is, I talk about. I've said this a million times too, but when I think I'm a funny comedian. Mm-hmm. I think I'm a good actor.
Sure.
Motivational speaker. I could be pretty good at that.
Sure.
Wrestling. I know I'm fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I've convinced myself that, like, I had to from a very young age. I'm getting this echo real bad. Are you hearing it?
I'm not hearing the echo.
I'm hearing it real bad. Let me see.
That's your hopes and dreams coming right back at you.
All right, let's see if I can hear it now. All right. I just took my headphones off.
Oh man, that's like Jerry Lawler taking the straps
Taking
down.
the straps down. I'm
That's
about
like
to hit you with that angle slam.
Kurt Angle taking the straps. You've got kind of a Roman Reigns thing going on here. Like you've.
Oh yeah, up here.
You do. You've got the man bun. You've got the Roman Reigns. Maybe you're part of the family, man.
Yeah. Well, I've taken on. It's funny because like I did this filmed set where when I was on stage, I was doing the setup for a joke, and I was like, "Can we all agree on something?" And I was going to get to what my next point was that we'd all agree on. And as I said, "Can we all agree on something?" Some lady in the audience went, "That you look like Aquaman." And that got a bigger laugh than anything I could have said next.
That's quite the compliment. I love that.
And I was like, I'll accept it. I will very much accept it.
I will take it. Absolutely.
Well, gosh darn it, stop comparing me to funny and handsome men. I need to. That's really ruining my day. Damn it.
God, how about them taking Aquaman, and making him a sex symbol in the new DC movies? That's who would have thought? Who would have thought?
All right. I like Jason Momoa for sure. I would say that we have a lot of similarities. Our silly gooseness, I appreciate. The hair, sure, we have that, and I just think that
you've been told you're similar. You've been told.
Mostly the whole movie mostly is not that good. It's only good because he's good to look at.
Sure.
Because he's a good looking guy. That's why the movie's good. The movie's not really that good, but you're distracted by how handsome he is, and his acting isn't great.
Talk about a leitmotif of those DC EU movies. Like I have such a conflicted relationship with those movies because I grew up on Superman. I can show you. Here's a little bit of show and tell here in my office at home. I've got the Superpower Superman right there. I've got, not to be confused with, actually, this is the Superpower Superman. This is the Toy Biz Superman. I'm invested in this ecosystem. And I have such a conflicted relationship with these new, right? It's like the Bushwhackers. But I have such a conflicted relationship with these new movies because my Superman back in the day was Christopher Reeve, and those movies that Christopher Reeve were in were just so fun and archetypal Superman. He's the big blue Boy Scout, and there was fun and adventure to those movies. And we had the Dark Knight trilogy, which was what it was. I mean, Christopher Nolan is always going to make these fascinating, complex, really narratively dense movies that I don't really consider as part of kind of this new DC phase.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. That's like an early. That's that predates.
Yeah.
The Batfleck is that version.
Yes.
But Christopher Nolan's and Christian Bale, like that was all its own separate, independent,
its own universe.
Dating.
It's its own universe. It's a cop in a cape. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, in the way that Christopher Nolan movies tend to be. But boy, then we get into Man of Steel, and I was pumped, man. I was like, I am Mr. Superman. I was pumped for Man of Steel. And talk about, I don't know how you feel about it, but talk about a joyless movie-going experience. Like I'm watching this, going, man, this character that I'm watching is barely recognizable. Even aesthetically is barely recognizable as Superman, and especially at the end where we kind of got into the stupid thing that a lot of action movies do, where it's like, okay, it's the end of the movie, a big thing is shooting a laser at Earth, the stakes are stupidly high that I can't really care about them anymore. And I'm like, and I walked out of that movie just going, I need a shower. Like this is, but then I'm like, okay, it's Superman versus Batman is going to happen. I'm like, come on, it's a Batman movie. It's a Batman. Come on, how can this be bad? How can this be bad? And then you're like, oh my God.
They have the same names of their moms. That's what makes it perfect. That's what makes it all come together. I'm doing this for this lady. How do you know my mom? No, that's my mom. Like,
why did you say that name? Why did you say whose idea was this plot point? This is like a Vince Russo. I can't. Oh, and mind you, we're pro wrestling guys, and we've sat through our share of dumb shit. Like we will tolerate dumb motives and whatever. But like, why is that Martha? No.
Well,
so I have such a conflicted relationship with these movies. I can't.
I have to say, I didn't hate Man of Steel. I did not. But I think for you being such a diehard Superman guy, you might have been standing a little too close to the elephant on that one.
Absolutely, totally. I completely can see that. Absolutely.
But I would say that all the Russell Crowe stuff was neat. I liked all the Krypton stuff. I thought that was cool. I like all the Zod stuff because I loved Superman 2. But I didn't. I recently rewatched Superman 2. And it's such like a comedy. They have so much like comedic stuff in it. It's so stupid. Like when they're trying to break out of jail, and the guy the guy's trying to climb up the rope ladder. Like that's all comedic timing.
Oh man, he just passed away too. Ned Beatty just passed away as well. But yeah, think about it. Okay, so Superman 2, classic. I agree with you. Lots of slapstick. It's very noticeable where they switched over directors, right? Like so they had Richard Donner and they switched to Richard Lester, and you can very much tell. Like you can very much. And like in the Metropolis battle where so you've got the three supervillains and they're battling Superman. It's this great battle sequence, and then out of nowhere there's this slapstick, like the ice cream hits the woman in the face and the phone booth is going off. Like, anyway, guy's toupees going off. We
need this. We need the comic relief. Throw it in there.
We need the Gaga. I'll tell you what holds up in Superman 2, though. Like, you can tell me if you agree with this or not. The love story there holds up big time. For my money, some of the best acting in a superhero movie is at the very end of Superman 2, where Lois is heartbroken. Like, they know they can't be together.
Mm-hmm.
And Lois is heartbroken. She goes, dude, you expect me to come into work every day knowing that you're Superman. And I can't say anything, and I don't even know. And Superman Clark is so conflicted. He's going to pull this really kind of problematic, rapey, roofie kiss that he gives her, where she forgets all this stuff. Like, oh boy, let's maybe not solve all the problems that way, Clark. Maybe
it was like Arrested Development, the Forget Me Nots.
Yeah, it's like, ooh. But I tell you what, but that whole sequence though was just heartbreaking. Like it's like, oh man, like, and I remember being a kid thinking that too. Like I remember kids like, oh man, that's so sad. They can't be together. Ah.
This is a tall drink of lemonade.
That's a tall drink of lemonade, my friend. So wrestling biography. I've got to be all over the map here. Wrestling. You said you're into wrestling biographies and autobiographies. Give me a couple that you loved, a couple that you hated.
I really liked the first 3 Chris Jericho books.
Okay.
I didn't read the fourth one all the way through because it was not really a book. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just didn't follow the same stuff. It was more to be like a motivational book. Like he wanted to make a self-help book. Like you're not the guy. There's a whole bunch of authors who do that. Let them do that. Right. Write your book the way you wrote the last 3 books.
Jericho historically has a bit of a problem, like wanting to be things other than he. Like he's an amazing pro wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If I never hear about Fozzy again, I'm cool. He doesn't need to be writing self-help books. He doesn't need to be trying to be the front man of the band.
Excuse me. Can I be thirsty, desperate bitch here for a second?
Yeah, please.
Chris Jericho is my biggest dream guest on my show. I reached out to his agent once, and she wrote me back saying I wasn't a big enough deal.
No way, for real?
And then I tweeted something at some point that was like somebody wrote like, why, if Jericho's a heel, why are people singing along to his theme song? And I said, in an effort to make it seem like the world is still normal, they have people in the audience who are paid to be there and are participating in it. I know the work. I'm on the other side of the barricade. And he didn't quote that guy's tweet who was shitting on him. He quoted my tweet, and he was like, nobody's paid to sing along. They do it because they're having fun, you stick in the mud. He called me like a dickhead or whatever. And then all his fans, like all his cult. There's the cult of fans for AEW so diehard. You cannot criticize what we love because we have it. So it's ours and we love it. So I got nothing but I don't know anything about wrestling. He didn't even look at who I was. It was just that I was a person who said that these are like, I was like, yeah, it does look like fun. Like I wasn't shitting on Jericho by saying these are paid people. Like we want the branding for the company who's running through a pandemic to continue the same as it was pre-pandemic.
Right.
So then his fan. Then I was like, look, I was trying to get the dude on my podcast, and his agent told me that I wasn't a big enough deal. And then all his fans were like, "You're right, you're not." And then all his fans were his agent was right, and I was like, "All right, sure."
You got the inner circle, all of them.
Yeah,
coming at you.
Well, the inner circle, the term inner circle, to me, it feels like it doesn't really apply to what that faction is. The inner circle is kind of an inside term for wrestling, and it's normally like the people who hang around with the booker and have can bend his ear and have influence on what the show is.
Yeah,
I don't see that being what his group is. I see that being what the elite is.
Right.
Like they're the EVPs of the company.
Sure.
These are talents. These aren't the inner circle. The inner circle is Cody and Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Like that. And
it's misdirection, my friend.
Yes, it's a little poke.
It's an inside. It's the new click. No, so the thing about what I find funny about the story you just shared was that they're calling you like you don't know anything about wrestling for having the audacity to suggest that maybe there are plants, which is one of the oldest practices in right, and they know that, like, of course they know that. So it's like they were working. Damn it! Like it was like a huge. How dare you?
I think it's just the loyalists, and I appreciate the passion. I truly do. I think it's great. Sure, but to go after AEW botches and take their page down. Do you follow that?
I don't.
It's a fun follow.
Okay.
But they did get shut down for like some copyright stuff a couple weeks ago. But
I mean, well, you got to think that the core fan base of AEW, like if you think of who they are, they're guys who are, I mean, who have felt for such a long time really disaffected.
Needed to be an alternative to what WWE was putting out.
And they got really hopeful for a minute in like the early to mid 2000s with TNA, and then that kind of fizzled out and whatever. So like I think fans of that temperament are really ripe to be kind of cult like fanatical for us. So I mean and as you said, like I'm so glad that the organization exists, and I'm so glad that like I'm glad that there's that there's a place where someone like there's no reason why someone like Big Show should not be earning a living, or Mark Henry, or
Is that his real name? Mark Henry? That's the Big Show's real name?
No, I was talking about Mark.
I know. I was just playing dumb for a second.
Mark, get it, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my father's name.
Sexual chocolate.
But yeah, dude, I think there is value in all of AEW, but there's not going to be much value if they continue to squander and lose audience members. If they're not attracting new audience, like they have the means. It's $1 billion company. They have all the means to build things the correct way and all that stuff. And they're pandering to the audience that's a cult for them. Sure. And their cult isn't even over 1 million. And I wish it was. I really wish it was. I wish them the most success. And I feel like they're going to be another option on Peacock soon. They keep up the way they're going.
God, that transition, speaking of, like, I know we're all over the map here, but man, speaking of that transition from WWE Network to transferring their content all over to Peacock has been such a disaster. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel it's been such a disaster.
Do you know, admittedly, I don't care. Like I haven't like searched anything out. And I feel like there's so much content that you can watch anywhere. That's anything that like, it doesn't bother me that I can't watch the DX Nation of Domination segment. It doesn't bother me at all.
I don't think that should bother anybody to not see those particular moments. But no, the big problems were, so when they transferred it, I don't know if this is still the case, because God, I mean, this is telling that I haven't tried to look it up in a few weeks. But when they first moved everything over, I'm like, all right, so it's going to be a section on Peacock, and I signed up, and I'm like, well, I tried to search for my, for stuff, and I messaged them on Twitter. I'm like, there's no search. Like all my, like, am I doing something wrong? Like all my searches are returning nothing. And they say, oh no, you won't be able to search for individual wrestlers or events. And I'm like, what's the, like, this is I mean, that's kind of a basic piece of functionality. But the other thing is, like, so if you're watching those old retro shows, because I mean, I'm essentially an 80s 90s guy, and I'm always going to be like one thing that I really like to do is like put on an old paper or something when I'm falling asleep, right? And whatever. They've inserted NBC they've sold ad time in old events. So if you're like watching WrestleMania 3, you're going to get interrupted by an ad for Geico Insurance. Which not only, I mean,
I thought you were going to say like a ad for Parks and Rec or something, like other NBC.
I'm sure that's also a thing. But again, not only does it kind of mess with the historicity, the historical
nature, I guess,
of the broadcast, which is important, because when you have people watching the Andre the Giant documentary and Hulk Hogan is waxing poetic about lifting the 8,000-pound Andre in front of the 800,000 people in Pontiac Silverdome, and they go to Peacock to watch that, I mean, we know we're getting altered versions of these events anyway, because Vince is always messing with the music and remember there was that period where they were in the copyright dispute with the World Wildlife Foundation, and so they had to blur out WWF everywhere, and so you couldn't watch like the Attitude Area when the scratch logo was everywhere.
Yeah,
like you felt like you're going insane trying to watch these matches, because like
you were kind of watching an episode of Cops.
Yes. Anyway, so those are my big problems with the thing. Come back to wrestling autobiographies. Where do you stand on Mick Foley's body of work?
Oh, it's great. The first book is the best book ever.
Yes.
I didn't read any of the other ones. I think there was a sale at Big Lots where his countdown to lockdown book was $3 and 4 people gave it to me. So I guess I should have read it at some point, but I for sure didn't.
I agree with you that Have a Nice Day is probably it's probably one of the best wrestling books ever written.
I liked the first Shawn Michaels book,
The Heartbreak and Triumph.
Yes, that's the one where he's on the ladder on the front cover. And then the second Shawn Michaels book, I hated.
I didn't even know there was a second one. So
God. It's very Jesus this, Moses that.
He went Vince Russo on us.
Yeah. When I said Jesus this, Moses that, it was a reference to Little Nicky and not my opinions on Christ and such.
No, of course.
But the other books, I love William Regal's book. One of my favorite books. I don't want to say, I don't even want to classify it by saying one of my favorite wrestling books. It's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember what it was called, but it was really, really good. I have a couple that I haven't read. I recently just read the Edge book, Adam Copeland on Edge from 2004.
Yeah.
And I think I'm either going to start next on the Roddy Piper book or the Dusty Rhodes book.
Okay.
And I have the Dustin Rhodes book as well, but I have not read that yet.
You know, it's so interesting. I remember I read Adam Copeland on Edge years and years ago, like around the time that it came out. And I just remember thinking that, man, he had essentially a whole career after that.
Yeah.
That it's really hard to even think of that as the same performer.
Right. As soon as I finished reading it, at the very end of the book, he went, "There's going to be another one of these," and I was like, "There wasn't." And I tweeted at him, and I was like, "You said there was going to be a second book. When's the second book?"
Mm-hmm. Fascinating performer, fascinating guy. Really, really like for my money, some of the best kind of, I say modern, there's more than 10 years ago now, but some of the best.
No, but like that match that he did with Orton, the greatest match. That was so good.
I love that marketing, by the way. Like let's raise the bar. Let's raise the expectation. What are you doing?
But
I thought Edge's like mid 2000s stuff with Cena was really, really well done. Like around the Rebirth. Like I'll do a hot take here. I'll do a hot take controversial opinion right here on the Evolving with Corey Castle podcast. If you're ready for this blazing hot take, I did not mind the mid 2000s WWE ECW experiment. I thought that was a perfectly reasonable experiment. Like I think it was going to have issues. Of course, it was going to have issues. That said, I think it represented a perfectly reasonable attempt to try something new. I really liked how they used Rob Van Dam. Like I thought there were so many. I thought it was a really interesting way to deal Punk into the main roster. Like so many interesting things happened around that era. And one of the interesting things was you had kind of this triangle going on where they were trading the world title or the WWE title between Rob Van Dam and Cena and Edge. And you had Edge with his rated R spinner.
Right.
And the live sex celebration. You remember this? The live sex celebration with like that's just like the guys on the OSW review podcast, like they would say it's pure bollocks, and I love it. It's just no, Edge is a good performer, and his book was pretty good. I tell you, as far as wrestling books go, so you got the biographies, and of the biographies, you got those first two Mick Foley books. Boy, I kind of start to lose the plot with I think it was the third one was the Hardcore Diaries.
Foley is good was the second one, right?
So Foley is good was pretty good. Like I liked Have a Nice Day. I liked Foley is good. I really like so in Foley is good. He talks a lot about the conflict with like the PTA people and I thought that was a really good nuanced discussion of censorship and stuff like in pro wrestling. I take a really objective look at that. And then there's the Hardcore Diaries where it's like, okay, he's starting to feel a little repetitive. And you begin to notice this theme of like this is like when Mick Foley was really beginning to be Mick Foley, cute cuddly bear, kind of post-hardcore icon Mick Foley. Mm-hmm. And he starts talking about like all the charity work that he's doing. And so I was like, okay, Mick, you're starting to, yeah. And then I don't even know if I finished Countdown to Lockdown. Like I know I got it. In fact, I probably got it at the bargain, at the bargain table.
$3 a Big Lots, bro.
And it's such a drag because the TNA story is so interesting. Mm-hmm. Like it is a fascinating story. Like even I haven't listened to Jarrett's new podcast because fucking Jarrett. What do you do with Jeff Jarrett? But it's an interesting story of Jarrett holds up Vince a couple times for money. Uses that as seed money, supposedly, as seed money to establish what looks to be maybe a competitor to Vince in the space. And the early days of TNA were such an interesting time, right? You had this question of like, okay, if you're like AEW is kind of in a different position because they've got all that money, they've got the con money, etc. But TNA was in this really interesting position of like, okay, how do you compete with WWE? You do weekly pay-per-views. No one's ever done that before, right? You had all of this really good, talent like this, you got Christopher Daniels and Samoa Joe and kind of these, the X division or whatever. It was so different and so interesting. And to see how, like I remember in 2009 that they signed Hogan. And they changed the rings to like they went from the octagon to or the six sides to the because God forbid Hulk work in anything other than a 4-sided ring and whatever. And I remember being just kind of heartbroken. I'm like, oh, you guys had something. You had something for a minute. Do that for another 10 years. Build it slow. So the TNA story is really interesting. And so I was disappointed that Countdown to Lockdown kind of wasn't more interesting, but
I didn't even try to start it.
You didn't even try to start it?
I didn't even try to start it.
Oh, Mick. Have you ever met Mick Foley?
No, never met Mick Foley.
I met him at a book signing once, and it's like he was promoting his non-wrestling book. It was a fiction book called Tatum Brown that he had written this fiction, and he read an excerpt. And the excerpt it included a scene of fellatio. And he thought he was going to be all cute by saying, now, I'm not going to say what she's sucking on, but every time I say toe, know that it means the other thing. And it was so Mick Foley. Like, it was just so she took his toe. And I'm like, Mick, you're... It's one of these things where his stand-up career was kind of so legendarily mixed that you're like, oh, Mick, you're funny as a wrestler. Can't we let that be where you're funny? Can't we just let that be? No.
I'll be right back.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you the stage for just 1 sec here.
All right. So for a few minutes, this is the Evolving Podcast with Dr. Glenn Doyle. Corey's off doing a thing. So viewers and listeners, this is just you and me for just a few minutes. And we can kind of continue talking about excellent wrestling books. I can recommend The Death of WCW by Brian Alvarez. Excellent book. Excellent, kind of an odyssey of fuckery. How an organization has it all and then just falls apart. There are people probably watching this podcast who are used to me talking about psychology and self-help and mental health, and now we've been talking about pro wrestling for like an hour and a half. And you're probably wondering, how is the doc? I mean, how is this a thing? And I would just tell you, the doc has many dimensions. There are many facets to Dr. Glenn Doyle. I don't just have to talk about mental health or self-help. Sometimes we talk about pro wrestling for an hour and a half. It's okay. We can let ourselves be complex. I can also take this opportunity to encourage everybody watching to check out Seek Safely Inc. That is the organization that I'm on the board of, where we are kind of a watchdog for the self-help industry. We're very into accountability and ethics in the self-help industry. We really kind of want to get the self-help industry away from kind of the grifters and the carnies. And by the way, isn't that the best word, carny? It's an excellent way. It's an excellent word. Kazarni. Anybody remember Kazarni?
Yeah, dude, Sin Bodhi.
That's right. That's right.
But I wanted to get to kind of the portion where I'm gonna just before I get into the whole details of it, I just want to make sure I convey to you how welcome you are on the show and how awesome it is that we're doing this.
Absolutely.
The part of the reason, and I've probably said it so many times on the show, but what's very important to me is that I have the kind of conversations on the record with people that not only will be on the record like right now, but it'll be on the record in 45, 50 years. Like this is going to outlive us both. So I wanted to make sure I had a lot of people on who I could make sure I told them important things that applied to them specifically. Like when I had my mom on and I talked to her about, how grateful I was that she sacrificed her entire life to make sure me and my siblings were happy.
Yeah.
And she did everything she could to make sure our lives were the best they could be. Mm-hmm. I want to have that on the record so that, one day when I don't have her to say that to her, I can go back and listen to the moments when she said it back to me. But in the beginning of me doing the podcast, I remember my mom had told me that she had saved these voicemails.
Yeah.
She had saved these voicemails onto CDs, one from her mom and one from her best friend. Mm-hmm. And she was like, how when like people die, you forget what their voice sounds like? And I was like, oh man, I don't want that to happen.
Right.
I don't want that to happen. So on the record, I want to be able to have these conversations with people where, when this outlives me, you can go back and listen to it. Or if it outlives you, I can go back and listen to it. Make sure I hear a thing on the record where I told you how valuable it is and how absolutely inspired I was by the fact that you dude, I hadn't done a podcast. I hadn't recorded an episode in 3 weeks. And you kind of lit a fire under me, and I was like, "All right, I gotta get there and gotta do this." Like, I'm excited, and I wanted to say how cool it is that we can have this conversation on the record, and how appreciative I am of you paying me the currency of your effort and your attention, because, dude, like that's more valuable than money.
Sure.
It really is, because, like. We could be distracted by everything all day and never focus on having a conversation with somebody like where you might learn or grow or maybe teach or love more. Like, and it goes to when I said earlier, like, oh, what if our resource causes us, and let's say we accomplish something really big together. If that happens, great. But if it doesn't and we never speak again, I at least want to tell you how important it is and how valuable it is to me that on the record, you decided to come and have a cool chat with me.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad that we're friends now. I want to make sure I say that so that I can now flip that around and give you the opportunity to say or ask me anything you want to say or ask me.
I'll tell you something that I find really, really cool and really, really special. So the reason why I found you was because, of course, I was searching for mentions of James Arthur Ray. And the reason I do that is because of the, again, seek safely, and we keep an eye on some of these figures in the self-help industry that are kind of that we view are kind of grifting, and we try to do some education. And when I reached out to you, because you had said that James was, you had said kind of a dream guest for your podcast, and I used that as an opportunity to be like, what makes him a dream guest?
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about kind of what we could talk about credentials, we could talk about qualifications, whatever. Something that I find awesome is that instead of kind of immediate, like it would have been really easy for you to be like, man, this guy is a hero of mine, and I'm not going to tolerate, somebody I don't even know, this doctor, this psychologist. I'm not going to tolerate this guy coming in and knocking on my guy. It would have been really easy. And in fact, here you are trying to get James on your podcast. That would have made a lot of sense for you to try and get in his good graces by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do that. You gave me an honest answer to that question, and you were non-defensive. And what really struck me about that is like you are exactly the type of guy that me and Seek Safely are looking to influence. Not even influence, but kind of open up to some of these ideas, not just about James Arthur Ray, but you're also a guy who's interested in personal development. You're a Napoleon Hill guy from way back. Yeah, you can have a conversation about some of these self-help concepts. Like you're the kind of guy who it's really important for us to connect with. Because again, you're not in the industry. You're not like buried in it. You're not, it would have been really, really easy for you to just kind of blow it off. But you were really interested in connecting, and check out how quickly we made this happen. You were like, dude, you want to come, you want to chat on Tuesday.
Right.
And here we are. And we've had a conversation, like whatever, we talk about wrestling, we could talk about movies and whatever. This kind of connection is the kind of thing that creates what we psychologists call quality of life. So I get a lot of guys, so one of these subspecialties that I do as a therapist, I work with men specifically. And sometimes they come to me because they're struggling, like a lot of times it brings them in. It's like, man, I'm having trouble in my romantic life, right? Like I can't establish relationships, or I need to work on my social skills, or like whatever. I need a girlfriend, help me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get guys coming in, men famously kind of have this conflicted relationship with seeking help.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are lots of ways somebody might find their way into my office, but almost always what I tell these guys is, look, I can help you with your specific thing. I can help you, be a better romantic partner, or like whatever it is. But what we're really looking to do is create quality of life. And how do we do that? We do that by having things that we're interested in and passionate about. And they don't always have to be your life work, but just things that really, rev your motor, and things that you like connecting with people about. Like here we've been talking now almost 2 hours about stuff that, it's not that, look, I'm not in the pro wrestling industry, and I never will be, but they're things that we are interested in, and that we have, thoughts and feelings and passion about. And it's been super, super fun. This is the kind of thing that creates quality of life, making these connections and having these conversations. So that's something I really value about you, kind of what you're doing here. Man, so one of the things you said to me was like, do me a favor, like before we did this. He said, well, do me a favor and go back and take a look at some of the old episodes, so you kind of have a feel for what the vibe of the show is. And here, and I'm here thinking, okay, so he's a guy, he's in the entertainment industry. He's probably going to talk. It's probably going to be pop culture and movies and wrestling and whatever. I find myself, like down the rabbit hole, like you're talking with Bethany, was that her name? You're talking like, oh yeah, this is what prison was like, and this is how I saved my life. And this is how I stay sober, and here's some difficulties with the 12-step stuff, and I'm like, man, you're helping create quality of life. That's something I respect. That's something I respect and admire, and I'm so glad that Twitter. Like, think about the fact that like Twitter doesn't exist. We don't meet.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will accept that compliment, and will accept the respect. I appreciate it. I want to make sure to acknowledge that I believe that we deserve a quality of life.
Yes.
And that most individuals don't know that they have to believe that they deserve something.
Yeah.
And I kind of want that in the final message of everything I ever do to go, you got everything you believed you deserved. So believe you deserve better than what you already believe you deserve.
Sure.
So for sure, I want that to be maybe it's the reason I'm on the planet. I feel like that's like the thing that lights my fire more than anything is to get a message to people that like grow, enjoy, be joy, be love.
So I'm sure you've heard the term self-esteem, right? The guy who came up with the term self-esteem, I don't know if he came up with it. One of the first psychologists who really had a theory of self-esteem was a guy by the name of Dr. Nathaniel Branden. And his version of self-esteem had two components, both of which have to be in place for you to have an experience of high self-esteem. One component was, I believe I am competent at life. I can do things. Like, I'm up to whatever life throws at me. We call that self-efficacy. But the other component was this idea of, I believe I am worthy of good things happening to me. It's amazing how many people are walking around out there truly thinking that they don't deserve good things, or that they deserve bad things. There are people walking around out there with a sense of not guilt, but shame. Mm-hmm. Like, they think because of who they are, or like things that have happened in their past, that they've got this shame kind of cling to, and they don't deserve that quality of life.
That's a learned programming that
big time
that needs to be deprogrammed.
Oh, big time. And it sucks because for so many people, they don't know where it came from, right? Like for so many people, it's like we don't understand that, man, we were programmed with this stuff. Mm-hmm. So what happens from a developmental psychology point of view, not to get too down the rabbit hole in this, but
no, get all the way down the rabbit hole. Pull those rabbits up.
Pull those rabbits up. From a developmental psychology standpoint, what happens is when we're kids, we have when we're real, because we're infants, we have what Freud called infantile egotism, and what that means is, or infantile narcissism. What it means is, when we're real little kids, we don't have the mental machinery to be like, okay, everything is not my fault. We think the world revolves around us. Like Freud and the people who came after Freud, like literally talked about how, like, when the infant, this is gonna sound strange, when the infant is in the crib and mom's boob comes down to feed the kid, Freud talked about how, man, the kid thinks that he's God because he made that boob appear out of the sky. And then sometimes when the boob doesn't come, right, the kid is crying, the kid is hungry, he can't make the boob appear. That's Freud thought that's the beginnings of some forms of what he called paranoid schizoid depression, but depression basically. That man, we get it in our head that, what did I do wrong that I didn't deserve the boob to come out of the sky to feed me? Mm-hmm. When we're little kids, not that little, but when we start to grow up, we have trouble. Like, we still think everything is about us. We think if we were abused, it's about us. We mm-hmm. think if we were neglected, it's about us. We think that if a parent, like if our parents get divorced and one parent leaves, then that must be about us. Because again, like we're not really equipped psychologically to know that, look, there's stuff that's going on with them that has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. Now, good parenting, hopefully, it helps you understand that, look, it's not all about you, but both in a good sense and a bad sense, that both, there are people other than you in the world, but you're also not the cause of all the bad stuff. Right. And that's a psychological process we call scaffolding. Like parents are supposed to support kids like a scaffold in learning that look, this is not all about you. It's okay. Like, you're going to have some losses. It's not the end of the world, and it's not your fault. Right. A lot of us don't get that good, consistent parenting. So we grow up with this sense of like there are people walking around our age. I'm 44. There are people walking around my age who are like, man, I feel like it's all about me. Like I feel like if I get left in a relationship, it's clearly all about me. It can't be that they have stuff going on. There are people who think that if I get turned down for a job, what did I do to, like, it can't be that they have all the people they need, or your experience isn't a good match, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it really, you're right insofar as it's a program that we run, and as we know from NLP, like, we run a program until it gets interrupted. We play a record until it gets scratched, and that's really where my job comes in. I scratch records all day long. People who have this shitty record of how I suck, how I can't do things, I'm not worthy, et cetera, et cetera. We scratch it.
I think there's a pattern of reaction. People live in a world of reaction. The world happens, they react. The world happens, they react. So if the world happens and it keeps happening at them in a way that they're becoming a victim, they believe that they must deserve to be a victim. That's what I think. I mean, I'm not a pro. I'm not trained. Don't give me your money. Don't give me your money to diagnose you.
Who needs therapy? I listen to the Evolving podcast.
Yeah, right.
Number 246.
But when it did come back to, I mean, I for sure believe that instead of being the observer, being the observer of your life, being a deliberate creator in your life is dependent on how you see it. So if you are used to having the reaction, this, of course, or, oh, my luck, then it's going to continue to be that way. Right. But if you go like, oh, well, I've got the power to get me out of this. I got the power to make this life better. Then stick your heels into the ground for a better life.
Yeah. But, well, the real trick of what you're talking about is getting very realistic about, like you're talking about the 12-step tradition. Like there's a prayer in the 12-step tradition. You have a serenity prayer about what we can and cannot change. And we have to get,
I forget.
We have to have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it's that wisdom to know the difference that's really crucial. Like, so for example,
can I really, really quickly admit something to you, Glenn?
Yeah.
I didn't forget. I just wanted you to say it so that I could talk about the strength in that wisdom. And you started talking about the strength in that wisdom before I got a chance to run in on what the bit was. But go ahead, continue what you were saying.
Man, we hot shot the angle. Damn it.
Dude. Buried the lead on that one.
Buried the lead. So here's the thing that, and this is a problem in the self-help world, because you get a lot of people who are like, look, you get out of that victim mentality. You have the power to change your life. Yes, but we have to be realistic about, at any given time in our life, there is a percentage of stuff that we can influence, and a percentage of stuff that we just can't, right? And we're not doing anyone a favor. And this is one of the problems I have with James. Like he will always err on the side of, you have 100% influence. And it just ain't so. And if we tell people that's so,
not practical.
Right. And if we tell people that's so, and this is, frankly, it's one of the problems with kind of the whole law of attraction, but that if we tell someone, look, you are 100% responsible for the world that you create, you're going to get people saying, man, I must really suck because I don't seem to be able to control the fact that I was abused, or I don't seem to be able to control the fact that I have this genetic thing, et cetera, et cetera. A realistic way of creating quality of life is saying, look, I don't know what percentage, and it changes, right? Like, I don't know what percentage of wiggle room I have today. I'm going to start from, can I change things by 1%? Like I call my people the 1%ers, because I'm like, look, I want you today focused on the 1% you're going to change. Now, if you can change more than that, fantastic, and let's go for it. But only focus on that 1%, because realistically, can you change 1% even by changing your mindset, even by changing, whatever, like how you talk to yourself? Yeah, you probably have 1% of wiggle room at least. Let's see how high we can take that number, right? And that's, again, it's such a bitch, because like the law of attraction guys, I totally like, like Joe Vitale and I follow each other on Twitter, and I feel that they're so well intentioned, like they really want to empower people.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's the priest guy, right? He had like a collared shirt on or something.
Oh yeah. He always
beads.
Yes, yeah. The secret he does. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And again, I feel that the intention is so good, and they're so passionate about empowering people.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to be realistic about this. And I say that, and people are like, oh man, that's defeatist. I'm like, well, it's you're not doing anybody any favors when you say, okay, look, you had you have these genetic disadvantages, you had an abuse history, et cetera, but you somehow created that. Like, whew. That's a rough sell. It's a rough sell.
Yeah. I do get, like, was he the one who was like, I'm here to be a little in your face, to be like, you created that, right? I get that.
Yeah.
But I think for sure that is a tool. That is a tool, not the tool.
Yeah.
So it's like you're at this point aware that you have the power. That's what I think that's what that tool is used for.
Sure.
But it's hard to then be accountable.
Yeah.
Because why are you accountable to this chain that needs to be broken, that you don't know that you're supposed to be breaking it?
Right. And in fact, that's a really good metaphor. I like that a lot.
You can use it.
When you think about like, I'm such a big believer in so many of these self-help tools, and I consider law of attraction kind of a subset of kind of the broader self-help phenomenon. But like, even if they're not perfect from a mental health point of view, like I'm such a big believer in using these tools for what they can offer. So, for example, the law of attraction guys are very big on visualization. They're very big on that, and they would say that by visualizing, you're altering the structure of reality on kind of this quantum physics level, and that's all above my pay grade. I whatever.
I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to throw you off, but I will interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But that, to me, I always looked at that as like, as Napoleon Hill would talk about, take the thoughts from your conscious mind and turn them into the thoughts in your subconscious mind.
Sure.
So that's the way I had interpreted that. But continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. Like, if you take that at face value, and if you say, look, I'm going to create the world by what I visualize, and you're visualizing success, happiness, et cetera, it absolutely is the case that we will psychologically respond to what we visualize. In fact, there's a lot of really robust research about how our brain can't really tell the difference between something that is vividly imagined and something that's actually happened. In fact, it's become a real problem as movies have gotten more immersive and the effects have gotten better, et cetera. Like from a neuropsychological point of view, it's really turned into a problem that, man, people with complex trauma histories are going into, Saving Private Ryan, and the experience is so immersive and so real and whatever. It's actually creating more problems, because again, our brain is not great at distinguishing between things that we're imagining really vividly and things that are actually happening.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. You can use visualization as a tool. Like if you visualize again and again and again, and like it depends on what you visualize. If you visualize, okay, I want gold coins to rain down from the sky. I want to be Scrooge McDuck. I want to go swimming in those gold coins. I want to be like Mario. I want to be able to break bricks and get coins, right? It's unlikely that gold coins are going to rain. I'm not going to say impossible because I don't know. It's unlikely that gold coins. Now, check it out. There's a difference between visualizing that versus visualizing, look, I'm going to visualize when a stressor comes across my path today. I'm going to visualize responding to that stressor, cool, calm, collected, and values focused. And I'm going to like visualize that over and over and over again. Because again, your brain, it's what we call mental rehearsal, and your brain is going to get into that groove. It's an actual physiological thing in your brain, that connection of like stressor, cool, calm, and collected, stressor, cool, calm, and collected. That stuff is amazing. So again, it's the same tool of visualization, but on the one hand, like no matter how often I visualize it raining gold coins, I'm just going to get depressed and discouraged because it's not raining gold coins. Now watch, I'm going to say this. I'm going to like walk out tomorrow. My upstairs neighbor is going to have like a leak and like whatever's going to fall down on my head. And I'm like, oh man, maybe I should have not used that example. Maybe I altered reality.
You keep me updated on what happens.
I'll let you know.
but
we'll do a follow-up podcast.
I started thinking about how crazy is it that like the word you said, value focused.
Yeah.
And were you talking about adding like life, like value to your life? Or were you talking about like the values that I've attributed, like my moral values?
I was talking about
like your quality.
More so the latter, but it has to do with the former too.
Right.
So
what was funny to me, that quality, like a quality and value, are both words to describe your self-worth.
You bet.
But also words that apply to monetarily. As like wealth, and your knowledge is wealth too. So it's
you bet. Well, it really goes to like, so one of the problems that humans have when we encounter stressful situations is that we get anxious, we freak out, and we do stuff that is not always consistent with who we are. And that in turn chips away at our self-esteem. Like it's hard to have high self-esteem if we're looking at our behavior over the course of the day and we're like, well, that's not really who I am, and that's not really who I am. Like, come on, what am I doing here? So when I say values oriented, I mean, if we visualize again and again that, man, when a stressor occurs, like I'm not going to freak out and do something that's out of character for me. I'm going to remember, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. Now, that feeds into this other definition of value that you're talking about, because, man, talk about what creates value and what adds value. I would say that one of the things that very much adds value is having a life experience where we feel like ourselves. Like, it sounds weird to say, but where we feel like we have the ability and the willingness to be consistent with who we say we are. Because we all know people who are not, right? Like we all know people who kind of put on a front over here and are not consistent with that. And it's hard to add value to somebody else's life when that's your deal, right? Like I would go so far as to say that if you think of the people who have added value to your life, they've probably been the most consistent. Like they've probably been like, man, I can rely upon them to be consistent with who they are, right? Like very, very rarely, it's like, yeah, that two-faced guy, he added a lot of value to my life.
Well, I mean, there is value in that too, because then you learn.
That's true.
You learn lessons for sure. Lessons are very valuable.
That's true. Fair enough. You got me.
So as far as the consistency, you would then at that point have to realize that frequency isn't the consistency you want to really surround yourself with. I want to make sure I absolutely say, if anything I ever say is something that you would like to apply it. If it applies, if you give me credit, cool. If not, whatevs. But for sure, I want to be the resource, and I want to be like when it did come back to us, like talking about Napoleon Hill, when he goes, you can't expect something without giving something.
Right.
So nobody just becomes a millionaire because they want to be a millionaire. Like they've got to bring something to the table here on it. So for sure, when it comes to me having these conversations with people, absolutely, like I'm not offering you tons. Like I don't have a platform that's humongous that's going to change your career or anything. But at the end of the day, you can have these valuable conversations, and you might pull from it some cool examples to apply to something later that it just the puzzle piece fits so perfectly and you don't really know why. And maybe the thing I said worked itself right into your subconscious mind. You don't even remember where you heard it. That's why I say, if you don't credit me, whatevs, because it's like the value is in those fleeting moments.
Oh, you bet. I don't know what you're talking about. I was expecting to go on the Evolving with Corey Castle podcast, and this would be my breakout. Like this was going to be the thing with the man, the myth, the legend. You're telling me that it's not.
Prepare yourself for your life to change.
I can get all the Chris Jericho fans to.
Yeah.
I love Chris Jericho. Everyone loves Chris Jericho.
Couple other quick things, and then I'll send you off into the sunset with a hot dog and a handshake. All right. So I do this thing on the show every time. I call it audio time travel. Yeah. Okay. So in 20 years from now, 2041, your loved ones, your wife, your kids, whoever, comes across this audio, comes across this video, and they're going to hear a message specifically recorded for them in the year 2021. But right now, you're acting like it's 2041. Sure. In this audio time travel message, what are you saying to people? It could be me. It could be me who listens back to it. I care about you. So it could be me, but I'm saying whatever. What's that?
That you care about me. That warmed my heart just then, man.
That's great.
That's beautiful.
That's we deserve it, man. You deserve it for sure.
tell that to James Arthur.
So what messages would you give to help the people you love with evolving to a better version of themselves?
My biggest message, and this is true today, I assume it's going to be true in 20, 40, 60, 100 years, is that ideas about what make for a good life are going to change. Ideas about how to change how you think and feel, like they're all going to change. Like the stuff that I do as a psychologist today may be completely nonsensical in 20, 40, 60 years. One thing that I'm pretty sure will be the same, though.
Can I point out that you said 246?
I did.
The number of the episode.
Good catch. So that stuff is all going to change. Something that I am pretty sure is not going to change is the fact that when you're freaking out, because I assume people are still going to freak out, and when we're pressured, when we're in pain, the temptation is going to be to try to do too much. Resist that temptation and just do the next right thing. Just focus on the next thing. Focus on what's right here in front of you. So no matter kind of what what problem you're having or what technology you might be appropriate to resolve that problem. You're always going to keep coming back to just do the next thing. Don't overwhelm yourself. Do the next right thing. That would be my message to anybody listening to this in 20, 40, 60 years, but especially like people I love. I tell you, Corey, it is one of the most painful things in the world to see somebody that you love struggling with something that's overwhelming. And you want to say, look, you don't have to handle all of this right now. You really don't. You can't handle all of this right now. What you can do is focus here and now. Like, just do this thing. Just do the next right thing. That's my thought about that. But the audio time travel, I like that. The audio time travel, I dig that.
So I want to make sure that it's very known that I'm somebody that can be your friend. Like, I'm a real person. If you're having problems, and this doesn't just specifically go for you, this goes for anybody listening. If you're going through something, absolutely, I'm not a hard person to get a hold of. Would you say we set this up a couple days ago?
Right.
And here we are talking. I'm a real person. I'm not a hard person to get a hold of. So if this is your first time checking out this show, maybe want to subscribe, maybe want to tell your friends, maybe you want to share some of the stuff. Clip it for sure. Take clips out of it. If you think the stuff's cool, do whatever you want with it. And maybe just don't take the parts where it might have been upsetting and say, look at this jerko upsetting me.
Oh, that was profound, man. That was just maybe don't.
Maybe the best parts.
Maybe the highlights. Maybe the high spots.
Highspots.com.
Highspots.com. For all your big gold belt needs.
The way I wrap it up every time.
Yeah.
Every time is I say, hypothetically, I've gifted you this show.
Yes.
So the podcast is now your show. This is going to be the first episode, the pilot episode of Evolving with Dr. Glenn Doyle.
Oof.
Episode 1.
Yeah.
In a very Jerry Springer's final thought type of way, in however much time you need, that's going to help people with inspiring them to make sure that they continue to evolve.
Yeah.
What are the takeaways from your first episode of your podcast?
For me, it's pretty straightforward. The fact that, if you look at everything we've talked about, we talked a lot about pro wrestling. We talked about entertainment. We talked about mental health. We kind of got into some metaphysics. If you notice, the thing that binds all of those things together is that we had an exchange, a back and forth of listening and responding and building upon, like an improv. You're a comedy guy, like an improv. The whole thing is like, it's all about the yes and. Mm-hmm. This is how we create quality of life. It doesn't have to be about one specific thing. Like, look, I've done plenty of podcasts where we just talk about mental health. And it's really easy when we're trying to build, when we're trying to improve our life. Like, we can go down the rabbit hole and you can wind up talking mental health and self-help all day long. I think as a final thought, I want folks to just really reflect upon the fact that quality of life is not just about narrowly hitting that behavioral science or psychology or self-help thing. Like, quality of life is built upon an exchange and an honest connection around things that people are passionate about, interested in, like at various times in this podcast, you, the viewer, have watched me light up, you've watched Corey light up, you've watched us laugh and yes, and each other for, a couple hours now. That's what creates quality of life, man. Don't get too narrow about it. Really kind of think about, man, what can I get interested in and passionate about, and how can I connect with somebody around that? That's my thought, anyway.
Can I also say a final thought? And
please do.
And
Yes.
for sure,
no, you can't
have it for sure be a thing that I think that you can use. You can absolutely apply this if it applies. Yeah. When it comes to ways to do things, methods, weigh out the us from the thes. Meaning like, oh, the way to do this, the way to do that, and the only way is this. And go, no, that's a way. That's a way. You can do a whole. There's so many ways up the mountain. There's not only one way up.
Big
so
time.
Weigh out those us and thes.
Love it. Love it. Hell of a point.
Be kinder to ourselves. Be fun. Have safe. Keep evolving.
Love it.